Good morning, everybody, and welcome. And thank you to Nimesh at Caring Friends and Sarika and Girish from the Raw Foundation for hosting today's meeting. I appreciate working with the iit-iit team. Really a pleasure, as always. Top-notch crew. So I want to spend a few minutes trying to set the stage on how we came to the 100 Basins Initiative, the motivations behind it, and then how we're very excited about the partnerships here in India to manifest this ambition around collective positive water impact, what that means, and how we can land that in a meaningful way across India and the water-stressed regions here. First, I want to try to bring attention to the fact that when we talk about climate change and we talk about how the risks of climate impact on water and water systems, some think of that as a future impact. But I'm here to say that many of the risks that businesses and other stakeholders face around water are being felt today. And they're manifesting in a lot of different ways. I won't go through each of these assessments, nor will I try to aggregate them because I think some of them are covering similar terrain with one another. But suffice it to say that there are annually hundreds of billions of dollars in impact on water globally, somewhere between 700,000 and 700 billion. And it shows up in storm events, prolonged dry periods, the impacts of water quality on health, the detriment of systems that are not ready to manage water on a reliable basis, and the way that costs businesses that need to get rationed for water when prolonged dry periods occur. So this shows up in many different ways, but the main message is this is happening now. And what that means is, with climate change, intensifying storm events, prolonged dry periods, these impacts will get worse. There is a cost to inaction. And the leading companies recognizing this see it as the systems challenge that it is. Dealing with water means you inherently need to take a systems approach. Okay, they're back. The hook. That's a record, the earliest. You have to think about the fact that most of the water globally is being used in agriculture, and therefore if we are going to try to find the amount of water that we need, we have to be able to work with and through the agricultural sector. We know that there is growing demand as population grows, and so we're going to need to figure out how to get more circular with water, both at a localized way and then also in the way that we manufacture and manage our cities, which will increasingly get larger over time. The Water Resilience Coalition is an initiative that started about 5 years ago by a subset of CEO Water Mandate endorsing companies. And the CEO Water Mandate platform is now 17 years old. There's almost 500 companies in it. The way that works is there are 6 commitments that companies take around water that they report their progress on annually. One of those commitments, and it goes all the way back to 2007, is collective action. And in fact, we know the importance of collective action, but I will say honestly that being able to do it in a real way that has impact at scale is super hard. And we're going to learn about why that's hard. We're going to talk about some of the barriers and some of the actions that can be done to accelerate action. But about 5 years ago, the WRC was born. And at the time, I think there were 7 companies. Now there are 40 companies or so, but big ones of about 5 trillion in market capitalization. HCL Tech, I see here. There are a number of companies that are here that are from India and or that have major operations in India. 3 years ago, we decided to do something very unique, which was to set a shared ambition around water that was global in scope, because we recognize that the architecture for collective action has to move from the international, but land nationally and subnationally. Water is managed, we'll work on, those are the organizations that are logoed here at the bottom of the slide. And we announced this joint ambition for 2030 at the UN Water Conference in New York in 2023. Another way to unify our membership is around joint commitments, around what we call net positive water impact. This is a 2050 enterprise ambition. But the way that you can realize this ambition has 3 pillars of action. And I'm just going to quickly walk through them. The first is around managing operational footprint. This is something that companies have been doing for a long time. This is around circularity in the facilities. It's around pollution reduction. And this has been the cornerstone of water management in industry for many years. The second is this concept of investing externally to improve the conditions in the area. Many companies do this under the banner of replenish or balancing or offsetting. CII has a new thought leadership guidance around water neutrality, very much in this pillar here. And then the third pillar, which is highly relevant to today's conversation, is around collective action. And this is about companies working together with their peers in particular geographies, but also with public sector counterparts and the independent sector and local communities to really drive that positive impact that we see. When we think about collective action, we define it very broadly. There's multiple ways that people think about it. It has a lot of different geographic scales. We take a broad view of it. This is about stakeholders that have different resources, expertise, and skills coming together around a joint purpose so that you can have impact at a greater scale that the individuals could do if they were working alone. That synergistic effect is the promise of collective action, and I think it's why we all realize we're here today, is how do we do this effectively? When we're looking at collective action from the CO Water Mandate perspective, we do recognize these different geographic scales of how we work. So if multiple organizations are working with one NGO implementing partner, that's a collective action at a project level. And you could work to scale that project within a basin by crowding in more funders and partners. You can also look to scale it through replicating it elsewhere. And IIT's platform, I think, can help in both of those. But it's a matter of bringing more focus and attention to the solutions that are working on the ground. We also believe that there's an importance around working collectively and thinking about collective action at this broader basin scale. And I'm going to talk about why we think that's important, because it allows a shared objective over a prolonged period of time, and it allows joint purpose to emerge. Stakeholders can get along better when they're working and rowing in the same direction rather than rowing in different directions. An important part about what we call basin action collaboratives is it really needs to be grounded in understanding the context of a basin and understanding a few things that everyone needs to align on. What are the priority challenges here? In some parts of the world, it's about supply and demand imbalance. In other parts of the world, it's that a large percentage of the population does not have access to safely managed sanitation services. The thing that I like most about net positive water impact is it's a global framework that you can tailor to local context. Water's hyper-local, you have to think of it that way. But you need to know, at the end of the day, if we're working together on water, what are the priority challenges? And what does good look like? What are we trying to do together? Because if you're saying, hey, we're going to make sure that we can get 10 million or 10,000 cubic meters of groundwater recharge, that's great, that's a good start. But if the aquifer is being overdrafted at 1 million cubic meters a year, you're not doing much. You're not going to change the system or make it more resilient because the long-term groundwater overdraft is occurring. So you need to understand the context. Where is the basin now? What are we going to do together? That's how we're thinking about it. The following 8 steps are very generic. We think they're globally relevant, but we recognize they tailor locally. That's the way it works with water. And so, but I'm going to walk through how we think about this and what we think it could look like. It starts with a convening capability. There needs to be some entity that has the credibility, technically, but also the credibility with stakeholders to serve as a place where stakeholders come together to have the conversation. You also then need to map who's doing what, where. This is where the platform is very helpful. Who's already operating in the basin, who are the implementing partners and others that want to take action. That's a diagnostic step. Then it's about the joint goal setting. What are we going to focus on? How do we hold ourselves accountable and measure our progress over time? And then that portfolio of interventions is around what's working the best, where's the best money to spend? Should we be doing it in groundwater overdraft or investing in nature-based solutions and source water protection? What's the balance between the two? How am I tracking on time?
Good.
So I'm just going to give an example of how this is shaping up in California under an initiative, one of the basins under our 100 Basins initiative called the California Water Resilience Initiative. I talked about this a little bit before the meeting with our colleagues at Raw Foundation. So in this instance, the governor's office did a climate assessment that found that if you look at the impact of climate change on water, that by the year 2040, that there's going to be 10% less available water supply. That's due to aridification, which is actually a common phenomenon in a lot of Mediterranean regions, Western US being one. That's a big shortfall in a place that already thinks of itself as water stressed. So what we did is we brought our member companies together and we said, of that shortfall, what portion of that can we take on? What portion can, it was a call to action by the governor, and we said, well, let's think about what is the footprint collectively of industry, including not just our direct operations, but our supply chain. A big part of that was the agricultural sector in California. We have a lot of food and beverage in the state. We do a lot of food export. And we came up with 1 million acre feet, which translates into 1.23 billion cubic meters. So that is our long-term 2030 ambition, what we're going to try to realize. And then what we're doing under the auspices of the California Water Resilience Initiative is starting to look at where are we now and what's that portfolio of interventions that can help us get to our goal over time. And we know that it's not all going to be about investing in non-revenue water in municipal areas. In fact, that might not even actually solve the problem. It may be a combination of investments in nature-based solutions, groundwater recharge, and other strategies. Part of what the collaborative does is help to optimize and understand where those best investments are that are going to get us the goal that we have. In this case, it's a volumetric goal. It's not always going to be a volumetric goal. And then over time, the portfolio of those solutions builds out as more come to the table and raise their hand to be a part of this solution. So here in this example, you see a number of the initiatives that have formed under the portfolio of actions for the CWRI. Now I will end on the following conclusion, that the state agencies that manage water or have a remit that touches water is super excited about the CWRI. And in fact, the leadership of CWRI was just in Sacramento last week, meeting with 6 different agencies, because they see this as a way to leverage their spend that they're planning to do already to improve water resilience across the state. And now you have opened a really solid door for collaboration between public and private to see where the industry investments can be catalytic, get things off the ground, potentially brought to scale through investments in the public sector. So it's a really promising strategy, I think. We think it's got a lot of promise. The way that these basin action collaboratives are shaping up, even within India, is quite different, but really looking to see how we can build on what we're doing and improve the models as time allows us to learn by doing. So thank you very much for the time today. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation.